The power of understanding is that power to know, that internal intuitive sense that no one can teach you. It's already there. As was talked about earlier, it's already imprinted upon us. That wisdom, that understanding is already there. What we're looking at today is living as a practical mystic. And what do I mean by the word mystic? Mysticism, and this comes from Wikipedia, says, mysticism is popularly known as becoming one with God or the absolute, but may refer to any kind of ecstasy or altered state of consciousness which is given a religious or spiritual meaning. So, it's about what we teach at Unity all the time. We teach about oneness with the divine, that none of us are separate from one another. When Charles Fillmore and Myrtle Fillmore were starting this movement as a prayer movement, he was sitting in meditation and other people were sitting around him. He was going very deep in meditation. Everyone was in the silence. And suddenly said, "Unity!" Yeah, they're like, "What?" "Unity, it shall be called unity." Because it's about our oneness with God, our oneness with one another, that there is no such thing as separation or division. So, we live as practical mystics. We don't just live with our heads in the clouds, once in a while. But we have to pay the bills, we have to clean the house, we have to, do the things that people do. But we do it from a different motivation, from an inner motivation. Now, I want to share with you, Mahatma Gandhi is one of the spiritual mentors in my life. Mahatma Gandhi, was one of those pioneers in India that helped to bring about independence to the country of India. And he said, "I believe in the absolute oneness of God, and therefore also of humanity. What though? We have many bodies, but we have but one soul. The rays of the sun are many through refraction, but they have the same source. I cannot, therefore, detach myself from the wickedest soul, nor may I be denied identity with the most virtuous." And I have a few quotes here from Eckhart Tolle. Any of you familiar with Eckhart Tolle? Okay, good. Like The Power of Now. He says, "Was Jesus the Son of God? Yes, but so are you. You just haven't realized it yet." He goes on to say, "The world is not here to make you happy. It's here to make you conscious." Now, I believe when we become conscious, we experience our true nature, which is existence, consciousness, bliss. We experience bliss, we experience joy, because we experience our true essence. Jesus said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall" what? Yes, set you free. All right. Some people awaken spiritually without ever coming into contact with any meditation technique or any spiritual teaching. They may awaken simply because they can't stand the suffering anymore, right? Suffering seems to be one of those constants in life. Somewhere along our life's journey, we experience suffering. Suffering, I would think of as resistance to what is. It is not just experiencing pain, but it's the story we make up about the pain. It's feeling detached. It's feeling separate. I've tried this. I've tried to see if I could suffer while knowing I'm absolutely one with God and others. And I haven't been able to do that yet. Now, if I can separate my consciousness from the idea that I'm one with God and one with others, then I can suffer. I can make it good, and I can come up with real good suffering stories to tell other people, and they can suffer with me, and we'll just have a great suffering party, and don't come to that party. But when we know oneness, when we know there's just only one power and one presence in our lives, active as the universe in our lives, God, the good omnipotence, when we really know that, We may still experience pain. We could experience, some grief or something else, but not suffering, because suffering has to do with that idea of separation, the idea of fear. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about my own life. This particular lesson has gone through several revisions. So come next week if you want to hear more of it, because there's a whole lot more that I couldn't fit into today's service, You're getting about 1/3 of it. And I decided to share a little bit with you about my own personal story, not to lift me up, but just to share with you something about the awakening process. Now, understanding is the key to awakening. Understanding, knowing that we know, breaking through the veil of error and illusion, discovering that there's only oneness. That is awakening. Discovering there's only oneness. And when we discover that, we can live fully in the present. We're not living in the past. We're not trying to live in the future. We're being in the present now, the now moment, the I am presence. So, I don't even believe in age. People come up to me and ask me, "What's your age?" And they say, based on the things you tell us you've done, let's see, they're trying to count it all up. And I'm like, I don't even believe in age. And it's just not, I'm not playing, I don't even believe in age. Because I know that we are eternal. We are from the mind of God. And so I don't want other people to put limitations on me. People who were born 10 years more recently than I was have told me, well, when you get to be my age, you won't be able to do such and such. And it's like, oh, really? I don't think so. Anyway, so when I was, just to give a point of reference, when I was just entering the teenage years, age 13, anyone remember 13? How was it? Okay, some of you awful, some not bad, when I was a kid, I thought, wow, I can't wait to grow up so that I don't have to go to school all the time and I can just have all this free time like adults have. Anyway, so at age 13, really, it started sooner than that. I started really questioning the meaning of life. I really started questioning if life had a point to it. It seemed so absurd. Now, there were probably numerous influences. There was a lot of commotion and trauma going on in my family of origin. And I was on a spiritual path, but I didn't know it. I was going through this emptying process, this process that was ripping me up inside. It was an opportunity for growth, for awareness, for awakening. But I didn't know it. I thought it was hell. And it felt like it. And so at age 13, I thought that God was a remote scientist that had us like rats just running through the maze and was detached and just watching. Like, oh, wow, look at that poor sucker. He's not going to make it. Next. That's really how I saw life, And I was in this real fundamentalist conservative church, and usually twice on Sunday, at least twice on Sunday, usually we'd have an altar call, an evangelistic service. How many people here have ever been to an altar call? Wow, there's a few of you. Okay, let me explain this. Right at the front of the chapel, the church, it was a huge church. At that time, we'd probably have about 750 in attendance. And so there's these benches about this high, and they'd give this very strong evangelistic appeal and maybe sing about 8 or 10 verses of Just As I Am without one plea, or Almost Persuaded. Or you may not know these songs, but we would sing them over and over. And these songs were about just this poignant being lost and needing God. And you could see on the back of the pews fingernail marks where people were holding on to the pew, it'd be intense times. The minister would give us a sermon about, someone was at an altar call and they decided not to go forward, and they got in their car afterwards and started driving home, and boom, they got hit by somebody, they died and went to hell. So, I mean, picture being a 12 or 13-year-old, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to go to the altar. I don't know what I've done wrong, but it must be something bad. So, I'd run up to the altar, and I'd be up there every Sunday, as a regular customer, and these men would gather around us. I mean, that's how they did it this time, men with men, women with women, and these men would have thick Bibles as thick as telephone books, and they'd be pounding them, and they'd be pounding me on the back, and they'd be saying, give it up, Timmy, let it go, Timmy, or you're done with the sin business, Timmy. And, when I was with some people here in Honolulu, I found a place called Sin. It's an actual business here. Yeah, I took a picture of it. I was asked if I would give up the sin business, but I found it. Anyway, so, it'd be this horrible time. I was just trying to experience oneness with God, and God seemed so far away, and the whole premise of the teaching in that church was separation. Ooh, we were born with original sin. They told me, Timmy, you were born with sin. Like, really? Before I even had a choice? Yeah. And now look at the choices you're making too, I mean, I just felt so lost, and it's like, this is the good news? And so I was just tortured. I was going through this real difficult time, and I was reading all kinds of things. I was reading Sigmund Freud. This is starting at about age 12 or 13. I was trying to find meaning. I was reading Thomas Aquinas. At some point, I began reading Albert Camus. Anybody here know Albert Camus? Ooh, some French existentialist readers. Woo! Okay, so in one of his, and sorry, part of this just gets a little heavy, so just let's take a deep breath. Okay. So Camus has this one book of essays called The Myth of Sisyphus and Other Essays. You know about Sisyphus? He was the guy that was condemned by the gods to be at the bottom of a mountain, and he's pushing a rock up to the top of the mountain. He's pushing until he gets to the top. Then the rock rolls all the way back down. Then he has to go back down and start all over. That's how life felt for me. I just felt lost. I thought, on the outside, people thought I was okay. And my family was distracted. There was other trauma and stuff going on in her family. And they thought, at least Timmy's doing okay. But they didn't know on the inside what was happening to me, that I was in hell, And sometimes I'd play the family clown. Sometimes I'd be the lost child. I'd take different roles on as we went along. But in the introduction to this book, The Myth of Sisyphus, Camus says, the only true philosophical question is whether or not to commit suicide. And that's where I was at. That was my daily question. That's what I lived with every day, throughout the day. And even if I was, laughing or joking, it was still there. It was always going. It's like, how can I keep going? How can I keep hanging on? I'll put on a smile, but people didn't know what was going on inside of me. I eventually got tired of that whole altar call thing. I mean, somewhat, it's like I finally got to the point where I felt like, oh, everything's okay. It's all right. Not going. No. Okay, went to this church camp in the mountains of Colorado. Any of you ever been in the mountains of Colorado? Yeah, can you feel the breeze coming down off the mountains? It's cool and crisp. You can hear the aspen leaves. It sounds like rain in the wind. And there's pine trees. Oh, it's gorgeous. So I was at this camp, and they had, guess what? An evangelistic service, an altar call. And I go, nope, everything's okay. And I felt this drawing, this pull from God. And I'm like, no, everything's okay. It's all right. No. But I just felt this pull. Come. No. Everything's all right. So I didn't go forward. But this pull, this drawing just kept increasing inside of me. It's like, what's going on here? And my best friend at the time was there at the camp. And I went to him and I said, I don't get it. I think everything's okay, but I just feel this drawing like from God, you know. And he's like, why don't you just go and see what God wants? Really? Okay. So I went to the chapel. It was empty. It was dark. I went in there, and this was spontaneous. This doesn't have to happen this way for you. All of us are individualizations of the presence of God because there's only one power and one presence. And for me, the power of understanding came greatly through the power of revelation, through the power of direct experience. So I went into the chapel, and I was suddenly immersed in the presence of God. I mean, immersed in it. And all I felt was love. All I felt was acceptance. There wasn't sin there because there is no sin in God. How could there be? God is pure light, love. You know, and so I was just immersed in this presence. And then my best friend and his friends showed up, and I'm like, I don't want to talk to anybody right now. So I went out on the back porch. The moon was just coming up over those trees, over the aspen trees and the pine trees. Whew. And I was just immersed into this presence of oneness. I saw that there was only one presence. Really, only one presence. And somehow I still had existence and consciousness because I could experience it. And yet, there was no distinction between me and that. There was no me and that. It was all one. All that presence of God, all that love, all that life, all that beauty, I was completely immersed in it, and there was no difference or distinction or division. And it was without any dilution whatsoever. It was pure. It was like shaking me to my core. I was shaking. I was sobbing. I was like, wow. I had grown up with this idea of separation, and it's all a lie. That idea of separation is all a lie. Now, I do not put down this church. I love them. They help me. My family is still involved in that church. Some of them are watching me right now. I love you. I love you for all the ways in which you invested in my life, really. But, you know, I grew up in that church. I became a minister in that church. I went to their college. I went to their seminary. And when I went into their theology class, they said, okay, to learn our theology, you've first got to understand the underlying premise that underlies all of our theology. I'm thinking, God, Jesus, love, sin, separation from God. That was the foundation of the theology, and they were very upfront about it. I thought, well, that sucks. Anyway, what I've discovered is that it's all a lie. You know, in the beginning of Genesis, it says that God created male and female. God looked at them and said, it's good. It's very good. Right? So we are born with original blessing. We're not botched or blemished. We're original blessing. We're the presence of God in action. Psalms 139 says, wherever I go, you know, I can go to the depths of Sheol. You are there. I can go to the furthest reaches of the sea. You are there. Wherever we go, God is. There is no separation. Paul, speaking in Acts chapter 17, speaking on Areopagus to the philosophers that were gathered there, says, in God we live, move, and have our beingness. We're not separate. Come on. Let's get over that. But realize that our suffering comes when we think we're separate. When we think that there's someone or something against us. That we've got to defend ourselves somehow. So I was immersed in this presence of God. And, I went back to my high school. During that time in my life, I was not at church, but at school. I was very, very quiet, very withdrawn. Well, when I went to school, I just had, this euphoric trance thing that was going on for 2 years. I was just immersed in the presence of God. And sometimes I'd just be outside looking at the clouds, and kids would walk up to me and say, "You're stoned, aren't you?" I'd say, "No, I'm just fascinated with the beauty of the allness." "You're using drugs." Because it seems so abnormal to experience the beauty of everything, to see the oneness of everything. They thought I had to be using drugs because I didn't see any separation. The truth is, I was being reverted back to the normal state. Yeah. So when we talk about living life as a practical mystic, first of all, nothing's more practical. Because when we know our oneness, then we know reality. We can be immersed in reality. I had to learn, okay, how do I function? How do I function in life? And that's a lifelong process. But when I look at you and look you in the eyes, I see the divine looking back upon me. That's what I see. I don't know what you see, but that's what I see. And I'm setting up a field, vibration in this field, so that your spirit begins to recognize the truth of that and resonate with it and say, "Oh my goodness, there's more to me than I realized. I'm not just Joe Blow stumbling through life. I'm the presence of God in action. This guy's trying to get us to wake up." And that's what this whole church is about, is an awakening process to realize who we really are. This last week, a very close friend of mine and mentor, Sister Marie Veronica, made her transition. And she was someone who always saw that in me, who always saw that divine in me. She saw me in some ups and downs. She saw me in some moments. Now, I'm not saying anything. No, I won't even go in there. I'll just say that she would come up to Olga Lucia and thank her for being in my life, because I had straightened up so much after Olga Lucia came into my life. Anyway, she was one of those, right? She was one of those people who just saw the divine in others. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to see the truth of each other. We're here to see the divine in each other. We're here to see oneness, to wake up, to come out of our anesthesia, to come out of our sleepwalking, and to see the divine that we really are. And we're here to wake each other up, here to wake up into magnificence. You are not called to mediocrity. You are called to magnificence. You are imprinted with the very voice, love, likeness, peace, presence that is God. All of God is fully present, living itself forth as you. And so you are no small stuff. You are not someone to take lightly. You are this presence of God in action. And that is what we are here to wake up to. And what I realize in this awakening process, because there's been numerous processes since then, is that love is the central key. Love is the key. That love is the presence of God in action. Love is what restores us to seeing from a unity point of view, seeing that we are one. That is why Jesus emphasized the two greatest commandments are to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. Love is the key. If you ever wonder, how do I live as a practical mystic? How do I live in this world? If you remember one thing, remember love. Okay? Remember that Beatles song that all you need is love. Da 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 da. All you need is love. Da 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 da. All you need is love, love. Love is all you need. So when you find yourself a little strung out this week, Start to sing that. Recognize your oneness. Know who you really are. And be a practical mystic in this world. God bless you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.